academia is still very antiquated, and we just need to shake the dust off and start progressing a little bit faster into the new century. Recently, mostly I'm just proud of seeing myself grow. I have achieved so much in less than a year in this new job.
Hello there, I'm Sarah McCluskey, and this is Research Adjacent. Each episode, I talk to amazing research-adjacent professionals about what they do and why it makes a difference. Keep listening to find out why we think the research-adjacent space is where the real magic happens. In this episode, I'm talking to Kasia Kuzmicz-Kowalska. Kasia first came into my orbit as a podcaster. She created the podcast which was originally called Science on Trial and is now called Science on Trial and Error. It grew out of her frustration at the often toxic research culture she experienced as a PhD student. Kasia has now completed her PhD and moved into the research adjacent world, becoming a project manager for a research consortium at the Medical University of Vienna in Austria. This transition was emotional at times. Kasia describes coming to terms with stepping out of academia as like grieving, but ultimately she has found a more hopeful world on the other side. In our conversation, we talk about her journey, current challenges in academia, and how research-adjacent roles can make a positive difference. Listen on to hear Kasia's story. Welcome along to the podcast, Kasia. It's lovely to have you here. And I wonder if we could begin our conversation by hearing a little bit about what it is that you do.
Thank you, Sarah, for the invitation. It's a pleasure. I'm currently working as a project manager at the Medical University of Vienna in Austria, and I actually work for a big consortium that is funded by the EU, and it's a doctor network consortium, so it's between 7 different research institutions in Europe, and it employs, currently it's starting to employ 10 PhD students who will be also trained within the consortium, so it's quite a big project, and it's coordinated from the medical university, and I am helping with honestly everything, just problem solving as we go. It's quite an interesting job and never boring, honestly.
Yeah, excellent. So you're quite new into that role, aren't you? How are you finding it?
I started in October, so less than a year, and it's been a bit of a roller coaster in a way that coming from research position that I was doing before, it was a bit of a jump, but it's been great. I've been learning a lot, like really, really a lot. Definitely the pace is quite quick because I had to just jump right into the project that started in September, literally. But yeah, it's been great. I am really surprised how much comes into play. You have to go between finances and event management and also recruitment of people, as well as supporting the training efforts. So it's very wholesome job.
Yes, yeah, a lot going on. So what you've said a little bit there that you were a researcher up until you started this job. Tell us a little bit about your journey, that transition, why you decided to go in this direction.
So I did my bachelor's and master's in Poland in biotechnology, and then I moved to Vienna to pursue a PhD. And I actually worked on a project in developmental biology. It was very interesting, quite long project because it involved working with animals. And I defended my thesis actually almost exactly to the day a year ago. So I got my PhD, and then I decided for both career-related but also personal reasons to not further continue with academic work. And I was looking for something that would still keep me research adjacent and to be able to maybe also still help with the things that I considered to be a little bit wrong with academia. And I was talking to a friend who is also a project manager with several grants. And she said, this is a great way because you can, still have your say and your input. You can support the people who are doing research, but you can also support the students. And this was very important for me. So that definitely led me to this choice.
Yeah. And how do you feel that transition's been in terms of sort of taking those skills that you'll have had from doing a PhD, but using them in a different way. Has that been straightforward, or have there been challenges along the way?
Oh, definitely. I feel like it's a process from when you decide that you want to step outside the canonical academic pathway to realizing what can you bring outside of academia and how does it translate. I've been doing a lot of research on that and trying to, like learn from LinkedIn, listening to podcasts to really understand what it is that I'm bringing. Because at first I was like, I literally just did research. How can I get this job? Definitely what helped was that I had my own grant during the PhD. So I had a bit of an experience with what you have to do and how do you apply, but also what kind of reporting do you have to do. So this was helpful. The I feel like what is interesting is that also not only my PhD helped me, but also my podcast work and all the other things that I've been doing kind of side as side tasks during my PhD. All the events that I was involved in and some science communication situations, because suddenly I really need this aspect as part of my job. And that's been very rewarding, so to speak, because, I was doing it kind of on the side and now it's helpful for this job. But there is a lot of learning as well involved. And I have a very supportive supervisor who has been, sending me for trainings. And there's a lot of opportunities for me to learn also from other people at the medical university who have been, helping with my questions. So I am very appreciative of this environment as well.
Yeah, that's excellent. It sounds like a really supportive place, and navigating, taking those skills. It can be a real mindset shift, can't it? To sort of go, well, I'm just doing research. And then to think, but what skills am I using there? And, like you say, there's communication skills and there's event management skills and there's project management skills is a huge one
Yeah.
when you're doing a PhD. So, so all those skills that people have got that they don't necessarily think of in that way, and it's just a different way of thinking, isn't it, when you come to apply for a different kind of job?
Yes, and I think what is very important is to talk to someone else, because when you try to judge this yourself, you tend to oftentimes underestimate how much you have actually learned and gained through your PhD journey, and it takes long and it can feel like you fail a lot, but even from these failures you learn. So hearing this, I needed to hear this actually externally, so I actually feel like this is a very important thing to talk to people and try to see, okay, I actually did learn a lot and achieved a lot, even though it was bumpy. Yeah, so I would say it's difficult. Also, it's difficult to make a decision that you're not going to pursue a postdoc. I feel like it requires a certain time, even a grieving period, to properly adjust, because I went into the PhD thinking, okay, I'm doing this, I'm going to be a professor. And when I reached the point where I made the decision to actually step outside, that was a long process. It was not a very easy decision. It felt a little bit like failing at first, which I'm happy to say it stops feeling like that after a moment. But you need to process this, and it's important to have people that support this kind of transitions are surrounding you, career offices that talk about this careers as, valid and sensible pathways that are equally important, and having this kind of resources as your podcast and, just like hearing it from the outside is extremely, extremely important.
Yeah, I think so much of it is about mindset, isn't it? And it's about, as you say, it's almost like a grieving period when you decide that this is not for you. But so many people, I think, I mean, again, one of the reasons behind this podcast, because I was speaking to a lot of PhD students in my old job who were considering what to do next. They've come into the end of their PhD, they might be applying for funding, they might be struggling to find the next job, to get a grant, whatever it is. And but the reality is
that only a tiny fraction of PhD students will stay on in academia. I mean, the numbers vary depending on different subject areas, but it's as low as 20% will stay.
Absolutely. It's actually
academia.
an alternative career when you consider the majority goes outside. Yeah, I know.
But when the people or everybody around you is academics, you think that's the path. And that, as you say, it's what, maybe family and friends expect you to do. So that's why it can be hard, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, that definitely was something that was a process for my family to comprehend, because to them, it seems like it's a very clear path, and they actually think that the job security is very high in academia. They don't realize how much struggle it entails to secure the funding or, to actually get tenured, and that it's just one challenge after the other. So we had a few conversations about that. And what is great is that the visibility of the other science adjacent careers is increasing, and then it's much easier to refer to these people that are out there and are doing, let's say, science communication, and this can be viewed as a career. And yeah, also making them realize that I actually have skills that translate not only into doing actual research in the lab. Yeah, so I am definitely happy that now they are all on board, and they actually see how much I still use my previous experiences, but how much I'm growing in this new job. So yeah, I think it's a process that not only involves the researcher, but also the whole surrounding.
Yeah. Oh, the whole community, isn't it? Whole community around it. Yeah. So you've hinted at a couple of things that, as we were talking, that I would like to ask you a bit more about. You mentioned that you've got a podcast, and you also mentioned that this sense of some of the things that are wrong in academia, that's very much what your podcast is about, isn't it? So do you want to tell us a bit about the podcast?
Sure. So the podcast is called Science on Trial and Error. And the idea for it came up during COVID because I felt like I was actually doubting a lot about academia. I had a bit of a disillusionment moment, and I started to realize that not only I'm struggling, but also many people around me are struggling, and everybody feels extremely alone in how they feel, and they are afraid to admit it because they don't want to feel like they are failing. And I started talking to some people in my cohort and in my very close surroundings. And in the first season of the podcast, I really focused on talking to people at different levels of academic careers and also in different fields to ask them what were their journeys, but also to ask them what do they think can be improved in academia. And this was really great. I feel like it made me realize how great science is, how great are the people who are doing science, but also it was opening my eyes to a lot of the problems that are out there, and hearing back from the people who have been listening, it made me realize the scale of the problem as well. And now that I transitioned to a non-academic career, I felt like what I would like to do this season is to bring more visibility to this beyond academia space. And it's been great. I feel like it's been actually much more hopeful than the previous season, because I feel like people are recovering when they get out, and there's a little bit more space to reflect, but also be more hopeful. And I really like that. So yeah, we are talking about what can be improved to facilitate transitions, and also just really discussing different academic, non-academic careers, and just the journey and how they came to make their decision. Very similar to yours, really. But I do feel like there is enough space in this niche to really talk to many, many people. And yeah, I'm very happy with the second season. So it's the more is coming. More is coming.
Yeah, we'll definitely put the link in the show notes and make sure that people can come and find your podcast. And as you say, I think there is there's space to share all these different stories. I mean, both our podcasts have got a slightly different emphasis. As you say, you're looking more broadly at non-academic careers. I'm looking at ones which are still in the research space, but not necessarily people who ever aspired to be academics. They're potentially doing other things. So there's that slight difference there. So yeah, so space for people to find those stories that they find inspiring. And obviously with your European perspective as well, you've got guests from much broader geographic or a different geographical area.
This season,
too.
definitely.
Yeah.
I'm actually quite surprised because everyone that I interviewed this season, I've never met them before, like in person. So it was a bit more of a jump for me, but it's been a great experience. Like really, everybody has been extremely, enthusiastic about joining. This is what I really, really do like about the networking via both scientific Instagram and also the LinkedIn. It's been really interesting to also see this part of academic world.
Yeah. But it's interesting the way that you talk there about the fact that people who come out of academia, they have this sort of recovery period and this process of adjusting. That almost just that in itself says a lot about some of the challenges that there are in academia at the moment, doesn't it? The way that it feels like something you have to kind of escape from.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, I don't know whether, I mean, for some people, yes, I would call it an escape, maybe even for myself. I feel like for some people, it's more about even regaining a bit of confidence, because academia can bring you down. You get so many rejections, like the papers are not accepted, you don't get the funding. There's so much competition as well. So it can really feel like you are failing more than you are succeeding. And this can bring even the most enthusiastic, science passionate person down. And I feel like once you get out and there's so many opportunities and options, and actually all of these experiences have value and you are actually very valued on job market, this can help to bring you back up, and you get back on your feet and you feel like you can again conquer the world. I think it's partially this feeling. And another thing is that once you get out of the a little bit toxic sometimes academic environment, you really start seeing how different life can be. And that's another thing that people have been mentioning. The work-life balance, unfortunately, in typical academic pathway can be very skewed. And then when you go into a job that is more regulated, you suddenly start feeling like there actually is a bit of more of a balance and you can enjoy the other aspects of your life. And I think that has been also something that keeps coming up with all of my guests.
Yeah. And definitely something I've seen reflected in people that I've spoken to as well. So, yeah. Well, just to move on with the conversation. I mean, perhaps these things will overlap, but I always like to ask my guests about some things they've done that they're proud of. And perhaps the podcast is one of them, but yeah, do tell us if there's that or other examples.
I am proud of the podcast, certainly. It's been an exciting journey and a lot of surprising opportunities came out of it, which I am extremely, extremely proud of and happy of. I am also always very happy to do any form of science communication. So, all these kind of public outreach events. Recently, I was involved in the long night of research at the medical university, and this has been absolutely amazing. And I'm always very happy when, we can first come up with the project and then you see actual people coming and asking questions, and especially the kids when they get involved into something that you came up with. It's just very rewarding. So I'm definitely proud of this as well. Recently, mostly I'm just proud of seeing myself grow. I really have achieved so much in less than a year in this new job. Also, I had time to study German. I've been improving my language skills. So there's been many things that are non-career related also that have been happening, and I'm just very, very happy and proud of this progress.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Yeah, sometimes it is. Sometimes it's hard to point at a particular thing and say that's the thing I'm proud of. It's more just who you are as a person, that and how far you've come. And that's a lovely way to think about it. So I do like to ask my guests, if they had a magic wand, what would they change about the world that they work in? I wonder, this is obviously something broadly that you've thought about, I guess maybe not in the context of a magic wand, but you've definitely thought about what you would like to change.
Whew, we don't have that much time. I honestly would really like to remove the toxic aspect of the academia. And I know that this is extremely layered problem that comes out of all of the ways in which, there is pressure that is being laid on people. But I would really like to see an academic system that is healthier for people that are in it, that doesn't damage mental health. So, I know that we are trying to provide this support now that people are realizing how bad it is, but it really requires systemic change. So I guess if I had the magic wand, I would do it, because this would speed up the process and certainly help to alleviate so many things that are wrong on many different levels. So I don't know if that satisfies you, but that would definitely be the magic that I would like to do.
I think it's definitely a very worthwhile aim, to do that. Are there any things that you've particularly noticed that you think we could just change? Like, if we could just do this thing differently, that would make a big difference.
I think one of the aspects that always bothers me a lot is that there's this very vicious circle that perpetuates the toxicity in academia. And this comes actually a lot from the ego aspect of it, because, when you're a scientist, oftentimes you are a very ambitious person. Otherwise, you would not have the power to really go through all the failures. But the bad aspect of it is that your ego is there. And then when you go through something difficult and you still succeed, you should just think, okay, I had a very tough time. I would like to fix it for other people. Whereas a lot of people think from the ego aspect, they think, ooh, I managed to go through it because I'm the best. If someone is also good, they also have to go through fire. And I really don't like this. And I feel like this could be improved with much more pressure on the management and leadership skills that are kind of requested from the prospective principal investigators of professors. Because, there's of course the academic credit that you get and like all of the papers and publications and the funding. But if we could put more supervision on this and have a bit more pressure that people really learn, or they have also these skills, this would be definitely a big improvement on so many layers, because this can damage people who work for them. This can get people to quit. This can just make the whole research environment very toxic. So I would put pressure on this. And of course, more, equal distribution of gender representation would be great. I know that there are some movements, but academia is still very antiquated, and we just need to shake the dust off and kind of start progressing a little bit faster into the new century, because I feel like oftentimes they're still in the previous one. So
or the one before that. Yeah.
Exactly. Just very shameful. So I would put pressure on these two issues that are very close to my heart.
Yeah, definitely it resonates with things that I've seen and heard, and I think the fact that we're talking about it is great, but as I'm sure you would agree, it's starting to feel like talking isn't actually changing very much. We need things to actually change.
Yes. I mean, there are initiatives that, it's great to see them, that are trying to, do research, improve the visibility of certain very statistical aspects of how bad things are. And I think this is great because this can pressure even the politicians to make certain changes about funding and, like increasing the salary of PhD students throughout the world, because this has been also an issue in many countries. Austria is quite fortunate with this respect, but I know that it's a problem in many other regions. And yeah, still, to make a change, you need people who will either want to stay and try to fight for the change, or do it from outside but staying fairly adjacent to the academic culture. And it can be extremely hard. It's very disheartening to fight, and then see no result. I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, maybe on the trajectory that you're on now, the path you're on now, you might find yourself in positions where you can help with some of that change. As you say, if you're involved with things like recruitment and communication.
Oh yeah, I'm very proud of that, actually. We did a completely blinded recruitment for our consortium. And we blinded, for gender, name, and country of origin, and also age. And we had more than 400 applications for our 10 positions. So it was really a large pool of candidates. And through this blinded recruitment, the majority of hired researchers are females. So I feel like, it took a lot of effort to do it in this way, but it was very rewarding to see that actually we were able. Our goal was 50-50 at least, because we really wanted to support the equal balance between gender representation in the consortium, and it ended up being 8-2. So really surprising, but very, also kind of proud moment for us. I also feel like I have an opportunity to be a mentor now a bit more, and I really appreciate this. I know that this can be quite hard sometimes, but it's also very rewarding to help people in their journeys and, provide advice or maybe guide them to talk to someone else. But I really like this aspect of my job as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that one of the messages, that I really want to share is that we're always looking to, the whole system looks to the academics to make the change. But the people who are in the research adjacent roles have a big, we've got an opportunity to just change things. Like you say, just change a recruitment process. You've not been in your job that long, and that's something you've been able to do better. We all have something that's within our area of control that we can actually do to make a change, make a positive change. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, I think that we have just about come to the end of our time. So thank you so much for coming along and joining us. Would you like to tell people whereabouts they can find you if they'd like to get in touch or find out more about the podcast or anything else that you do?
Certainly. So thank you so much for the invitation, first of all. You can find me on LinkedIn, both me as a person. You can reach out through the DM. I'm always happy to chat, but also through the podcasts page on LinkedIn. The podcast is available on all major podcasting platforms, Spotify, also YouTube. And we also have Instagram, where there are some behind the scenes, and just message on any of these. And I'm always happy to chat and always happy to support.
Fantastic. I will put all those links in the show notes so that people can find you. Thank you so much. It's been lovely to meet you.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been lovely to meet you too.
Thanks for listening to Research Adjacent. If you're listening in a podcast app, please check you're subscribed and then use the links in the episode description to find full show notes and to follow the podcast on LinkedIn or Instagram. You can also find all the links and other episodes at www.researchadjacent.com. Research Adjacent is presented and produced by Sarah McCluskey, and the theme music is by Lemon Music Studios on Pixabay. And you, yes you, get a big gold star for listening right to the end. See you next time.